Did the dark yellow ochre create the perfect desert dust effect? Tell me your favorite weathering technique from this build in the comments section. Hello, and welcome to Model Front Chronicles, Episode 6. We're turning this base into the gritty, sun-baked Desert Sentinel, capturing the harsh reality of the North Africa campaign. Before applying any color, I prepared the desert floor by applying a smooth, consistent coat of Vallejo white primer. Priming the textured base with this bright, matte white is essential as it seals the surface, prevents any underlying dark colors from bleeding through, and gives us the ideal canvas to start building the specific reddish tone hues of the 1943 North African desert. Begin your weathering process with Step 1, base coat the desert floor. This is the first of 3 critical steps to achieving the realistic North African sand effect. You will mix your base color to establish a light, warm, matte foundation for the desert sand. Combine your Vallejo buff primarily with plenty of white, then add just a tiny drop of chocolate brown to give the mix warmth without making it dark. Thin this mix slightly so it flows smoothly, ensuring it is a very pale tan. Apply this thin, uniform base coat over the entire white primed ground, making sure the coverage is full and even. Allow this layer to dry completely before proceeding. While the desert floor was drying, to achieve maximum depth, I began by applying a precise pin wash using Tamiya black panel line color in all the seams and creases of the sandbags. After allowing it to settle, I carefully cleaned the flat areas with the cotton swab to isolate the shadow effect. This was immediately followed by dry brushing the sun-exposed edges. I used a diluted mix of Vallejo khaki and white for this final highlight, making the canvas look distinctly worn and bleached. To achieve a realistic transition, I began by supergluing the sandbags into their final positions on the base. Following this, I focused on blending them into the desert floor. I applied a concentrated layer of Vallejo dark yellow ochre pigment along the base of the sandbags, feathering the dust upward onto the canvas to eliminate any visual seam between the structure and the train. Using a pipette, I carefully saturated the pigment layer with Vallejo pigment binder, allowing the medium to wick into the sand and permanently fix the dust particles in place. Now that the base coat is finally dry, we move to Step 2, dry brush for texture. This is a crucial step for simulating sun-bleached rough sand. To create the highlight color, mix a generous amount of Vallejo white with just a tiny bit of your base coat mix. The color should be extremely pale. Using a stiff, flat brush, load it with the paint and then vigorously wipe nearly all of it off onto a paper towel. The brush must feel dry. Finally, use quick, light, and random strokes to drag the brush across the entire textured ground. The paint will only catch the highest peaks and ridges, instantly making the ground look rough, dry, and emphasizing the texture before we apply the final pigment color. I permanently glued and affixed the tint to the base. For the initial weathering, I dry brushed the canvas using Vallejo buff. This emphasized the texture and created a sun-faded effect. For the accessories, I glued the radio crate to the base and immediately applied dark yellow ochre pigment to the ground seams to achieve a realistic blend. I completed the radio by applying Vallejo gloss varnish to the dials, simulating a highly realistic glass surface. The final structural elements were then completed and installed. The fence post received a base coat of Vallejo wood, while the fence wire was painted Vallejo hull red for an initial rusted appearance. Following this, the radio was permanently glued onto the crate. I then painted the separate power cable and microphone cable black. With the radio secured, I ran the cables, gluing both the power cable and the microphone cable to the radio unit. Finally, I fixed the DAK soldier to the base in his final position, ensuring he was correctly posed as if actively operating the radio. From there, the painted fence wire was strung and attached to the fence post. When the components were affixed, I addressed the transitions to eliminate any visible seams. I carefully applied a thick textured paste of hobby sand and glue with a bit of Vallejo buff added. This was added to the base of the accessories where they meet the ground to fill any gaps. To finalize the blend, I gently dry brushed in areas, ensuring every piece looked fully settled into the sand. And that completes our detailed journey in episode 6, North Africa, Weathering the Desert Outpost. We've transformed a simple cedar base into the gritty sun-baked Desert Sentinel. By carefully layering textures, from the precise shading of the sandbags using Tamiya black panel line color, to the cohesive blending achieved with Vallejo dark yellow ochre pigment across the entire base, we successfully captured the harsh reality of the North African campaign. The structural details, like the scratch-built fence and the wired radio crate, truly bring this scene to life, proving that attention to weathering and seamless transitions is the key to realistic military modeling. Did the dark yellow ochre create the perfect desert dust effect? Tell me your favorite weathering technique from this build in the comments section. If you want to see more step-by-step guides like this, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next build. Thanks for tuning in to Model Front Chronicles.